Oops. At least now you have some color. You look as faded as his love for you. The red wine hit my chest before I even saw the glass tilt. My stepsister, Caitlin, didn't apologize. She stood there in her custom morning couture, smiling as the dark stains spread across the only black dress I owned. Around us, the chatter of the funeral reception died instantly. Don't just stand there dripping, Giselle, my stepmother, Brenda, snapped from behind her. She shoved a heavy silver tray into my hands. If you're going to look like the help, you might as well act like it. Serve the champagne. Guests are thirsty. Before I tell you exactly how I wiped that smirk off her face forever, drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I'd love to know who's part of our community. The kitchen door swung shut behind me, severing the noise of the party like a guillotine. The air in here was cool, sterile, and smelled of lemon polish, the scent of my life for the last 5 years. I walked to the sink, grabbed a bottle of club soda, and started scrubbing the wine stain on my chest. It didn't budge. The red mark sat there like a target. I looked at my reflection in the stainless steel fridge. I am 25 years old. I have a degree in business management that I earned at night while changing Grandpa Arthur's oxygen tanks during the day. But to the people in the other room, I am just Giselle, the inconvenient leftover from a marriage they want to forget. For years, I asked myself the question every victim asks. Why? Why was Brenda so cruel? Why did Caitlin, who had beauty, money, and freedom, feel the need to trip me in hallways and spill wine on my only dress? Was I really that unlovable? Was I really just a burden? I stopped scrubbing. The answer wasn't about me. It never was. It was the parasite's delusion. Grandpa Arthur was the host. Brenda and Caitlin were the parasites. They fed on his money, his status, and his name. But parasites have a deep, instinctual fear of the immune system. They hate anything that reminds them they are not the body itself. I was the immune system. I was the one who trimmed his nails, read him the market reports, and held his hand when the morphine nightmares set in. I was the only one who made him smile without asking for a check afterwards. They didn't hate me because I was incompetent. They hated me because I was the mirror reflecting their own ugliness. Every time Grandpa looked at me with love, it reminded them that their connection to him was purely transactional. To survive that truth, they had to lower me. They had to turn me into the help so they could feel like the masters. It was a psychological necessity for them. If I was human, they were monsters. So, I couldn't be human. I looked down at the ruined dress. Let them have their delusion for 1 more hour. Let them think this stain defines me. They thought they were breaking me by making me serve them. They didn't realize they were just giving me a front row seat to their own demise. I dried my hands on a dish towel. The lawyer, a nervous junior associate named Timothy, was due to read the will in 10 minutes. I didn't expect money. I didn't expect a house. Grandpa and I had made our peace long before he took his last breath. But I knew one thing for certain. Arthur Sterling never did anything without a plan. I smoothed the front of my stained uniform, lifted the silver tray of champagne flutes, and walked back out into the lion's den. The heavy oak doors of the library were closed, sealing us in with the scent of old paper and greed. The family lawyer, Timothy, sat at the head of the mahogany table, looking like a child wearing his father's suit. He adjusted his glasses, his hands trembling slightly as he picked up the leather-bound document. Brenda sat to his right, already posed like the grieving widow, though her eyes were dry and sharp. Caitlin was scrolling on her phone, bored. I stood near the door, holding my tray, invisible. "We are gathered to read the last will and testament of Arthur Sterling," Timothy began, his voice thin. The reading went exactly as they expected. To Caitlin, his beloved granddaughter, he left $5 million in cash, accessible immediately. Caitlin actually yawned, muttered cool, and went back to her phone. $5 million. Dismissed with a yawn. To Brenda, his devoted wife, he left the penthouse in Manhattan and a life estate in this very mansion. That meant she had the right to live here until she died, though she didn't own the deed. Brenda smiled, a satisfied, predatory curl of her lips. It's what he would have wanted. He knew I couldn't bear to leave our home. Our home. She'd spent every winter in street barts complaining about the drafty hallways. And finally, Timothy said, clearing his throat. He looked at me, pity in his eyes. To Giselle. The room went silent. Brenda turned, her gaze locking onto me. "Go on," she urged. "Let's hear what he left the help." Timothy reached into his briefcase and pulled out a single, thin, yellowed envelope. It was sealed with Scotch tape. It looked like something you'd find in a junk drawer. He slid it across the polished table. "He left you this." I walked forward, my legs heavy. I picked up the envelope. It weighed nothing. Brenda snatched it from my hand before I could even look at it. She held it up to the chandelier light, squinting. Then she laughed. It was a harsh, barking sound. It's probably his unpaid medical bills, she crowed. Or maybe a list of chores he forgot to assign you. She tossed it back onto the table like it was contaminated. He knew you were used to being a servant, Giselle. He didn't leave you money because he didn't love you. He knew you wouldn't know what to do with it. You're just not quality. The words didn't cut because they were cruel. They cut because a small, terrified part of me believed them. I looked at the envelope. Was this it? Was this really how he saw me? Just the girl who changed the tanks? The granddaughter who wasn't worth a single dollar of the empire he built? Brenda leaned back, sipping her champagne. Don't look so tragic. We'll let you stay in the servants' quarters for a few weeks. Until you find a shelter. The pain in my chest was so sharp I couldn't breathe. It wasn't about the money. I would have lived in a cardboard box if it meant I had his love. But this silence from the grave felt like a rejection so total it threatened to erase me. Let me get rid of that for you, Brenda said, her voice smooth as oil. She reached across the table, her manicured fingers aiming for the yellow envelope. Trash belongs in the trash, Giselle. We don't want you hoarding garbage in the house. It attracts rats. For the first time in 5 years, my body moved before my brain did. I snatched the envelope off the mahogany surface with a speed that startled us both. My chair screeched against the floorboards as I stood up. Don't touch it, I said. My voice was low, shaking, but it didn't sound like the obedient servant anymore. It sounded like a warning. Brenda recoiled, her hand hovering in midair. Excuse me? Did you just raise your voice at me in my own house? I'm leaving, I said. I didn't wait for permission. I turned and walked out of the library, clutching the thin paper square to my chest like it was a shield. Behind me, I heard Caitlin snicker. Let her go, Mom. She probably wants to go cry in the pantry. She wasn't wrong about the location, but she was wrong about the tears. I didn't go to my room. I went to the butler's pantry, a narrow, windowless room between the kitchen and the dining hall where I had spent thousands of hours polishing silver. It was the only place in this sprawling mansion that felt safe. I locked the door. My hands were trembling so hard I almost ripped the paper as I broke the seal. I slid the contents out onto the cold granite counter. It wasn't a bill. It wasn't a list of chores. It was a single, white index card. On it, in ink that looked like it had been pressed down hard, were 10 digits. A phone number. And below that, a single sentence in Grandpa Arthur's unmistakable, jagged handwriting. Call when the wolves show their teeth. I stared at the words. The breath left my lungs in a rush. He knew. He knew exactly what they would do. He knew Brenda would mock me. He knew Caitlin would try to erase me. He hadn't left me this envelope as a final insult. He had left it as a weapon. He hadn't abandoned me. He had armed me. I pulled my phone from my apron pocket. The screen was cracked. Caitlin had accidentally knocked it off a table last week, but it still worked. I dialed the number. It rang once. Sterling Legal. A voice answered. It wasn't Timothy, the nervous junior associate in the library. This voice was deep, gravelly, and commanded instant respect. It was the voice of a man who ate sharks for breakfast. I knew that voice. It was Mr. Sterling, the chief legal counsel for the entire Sterling Empire. He was Grandpa's oldest friend, and the most feared litigator in the state. Brenda had been trying to get a meeting with him for months, but he never returned her calls. Hello? I whispered. This is Giselle. There was a pause on the other end. A heavy, significant silence. I know who it is, Mr. Sterling said. His tone wasn't dismissive. It was deferential. I have the security team on standby, and the transfer documents are on my desk. I've been waiting for your call, Madam Chairwoman. The world tilted on its axis. Madam Chairwoman, what did you just call me? The deed to the estate and the controlling shares of the Sterling Group were transferred into a blind trust 6 months ago, he said, speaking quickly and clearly. You are the sole beneficiary and the executing officer of that trust. You own the company. You own the assets. And most importantly, Giselle, you own the house you're standing in. I looked at the door of the pantry. On the other side, Brenda was drinking champagne that belonged to me, sitting in a chair that belonged to me, celebrating a victory that didn't exist. Are you ready to take your seat at the head of the table? Mr. Sterling asked. I wiped the last tear from my cheek. It was the last tear I would ever shed for those people. Yes, I said. I'm ready. Come in. I pushed the pantry door open and stepped back into the hallway. My reflection in the hallway mirror caught my eye. I was still wearing the maid's uniform. I still had the wine stain on my chest. My hair was still pulled back in a severe, servant-like bun. But something behind my eyes had changed. The girl who used to flinch at the sound of Brenda's voice was gone. In her place was the CEO of the Sterling Empire. I walked into the library. The atmosphere was thick with self-congratulatory greed. Caitlin was already online, looking up luxury cars. Brenda was on the phone, likely bragging to one of her Hamptons friends about the Manhattan penthouse. When she saw me, Brenda didn't even look up from her phone. She just extended her empty champagne flute in my direction, snapping her fingers. Finally, she said, her voice bored. Top me off, Giselle. And try not to spill it this time. This carpet is silk. I didn't move. I didn't take the glass. I just stood at the head of the table, directly opposite her. No, I said. The room went dead silent. Brenda lowered her phone slowly. Her eyes narrowed. Excuse me? What did you just say to me? I said no. My voice was calm, steady, and loud enough to reach the corners of the room. I'm done serving you, Brenda. Brenda stood up, her face flushing a dangerous shade of red. You ungrateful little leech. You think because your grandfather left you a scrap of paper you can grow a spine? Get out. Get out of my house before I have security throw you out. That won't be necessary. A deep voice boomed from the doorway. The double doors swung open. Mr. Sterling strode in, flanked by 4 men in dark suits who radiated a very different kind of authority than the event security Brenda had hired. Timothy, the junior lawyer, practically fell out of his chair. Mr. Sterling? Timothy squeaked. I didn't know you were coming. Brenda looked confused. Who is this? Mr. Sterling ignored her completely. He walked straight to me, stopped, and bowed his head slightly. Madam Chairwoman, the perimeter is secure. Your team is ready. Chairwoman? Caitlin laughed, a nervous, high-pitched sound. What is he talking about? She's the maid. Mr. Sterling turned to face them. He opened a black leather portfolio and placed a single document on the table. It wasn't yellow or old. It was crisp, white, and stamped with the official seal of the state. This is a deed of transfer, Mr. Sterling announced, his voice filling the room. Executed 6 months ago, Arthur Sterling transferred all real estate holdings, including this estate, and 90% of the voting stock in the Sterling Group into a blind trust. Brenda rolled her eyes. So, who controls the trust? My husband obviously left it to me to manage. No, Mrs. Sterling, Mr. Sterling said, his smile thin and sharp as a razor. He didn't. The sole trustee and beneficiary is Giselle Sterling. Brenda froze. She looked at the document, then at me, then back at the document. That's illegal. He couldn't have. I'm his wife. He gave you the penthouse and the cash as a severance package. Brenda, I said, stepping forward. He wanted to make sure you were comfortable while you left. But he didn't trust you with his legacy. He trusted me. This is my house. Brenda shrieked, slamming her hand on the table. I have rights. Actually, I said, picking up the bottle of champagne she had demanded. I poured the expensive liquid onto the carpet, the silk carpet she was so worried about. You are guests in my house, and you have overstayed your welcome. For a moment, Brenda looked like she'd been slapped. She stared at the deed, her chest heaving, her face a mask of crumbling plaster. But then, a slow, malicious smile spread across her lips. It was the smile of a predator who just found a loose bar in the cage. Nice try, she purred. She reached into her clutch and pulled out the copy of the will Timothy had given her. She flipped to page 4, her movements sharp and jerky. You think you're so smart, little girl. But you forgot about the codicil. She slammed her finger onto the paper. Read it, paragraph 7. Regardless of ownership transfer, Brenda Sterling retains a life estate in the primary residence for the duration of her natural life. She lifted her chin, eyes blazing. I have the legal right to stay here until I die. You may own the house, Giselle, but you can't remove me. I'll live here and make your life hell. Mr. Sterling only nodded. She was right on paper. The life estate meant Grandpa had promised she'd never be homeless, and she planned to weaponize that mercy. Brenda screamed at security to leave, claiming we were the intruders. For a moment, she had won. But narcissists don't stop when they win, they destroy. Her gaze locked on the Ming vase, the most precious item in the room. Before I could stop her, she grabbed it and hurled it to the floor. It shattered like a gunshot, shards skidding across the marble. She smirked, expecting tears. Instead, Mr. Sterling calmly flipped to a new page and read aloud. Brenda's life estate was conditional. Any deliberate damage to the Sterling collection voided it. The vase was item number 1. 4 cameras recorded everything. Brenda's rights evaporated. She was now a trespasser. Panic replaced fury as security seized her. I ordered them to remove her and call the police for felony destruction. She fought, screaming she owned the house, but it was over. Caitlin bolted. The doors slammed, and peace dropped into the room like cleansing air. Sterling finalized the transfer. When they left, I sifted through the broken ceramic and found a hidden Polaroid grandpa holding me as a baby. with a message on the back. My greatest treasure. Tears came not from loss, but release. Grandpa hadn't left me a vase, he left me proof of love and belonging. I poured out Brenda's champagne, lifted a glass of water to the moon, and whispered, "To us, Grandpa," and to trash taking itself out. Freedom tasted cold and clean,